So I'm heading home at the minute, and I've got loads going on. Basically, my mum lives on her own. She's had a hip replacement. She had a hip replacement 2 days ago, and she's still in the hospital. And I'm basically looking after her dogs, and she's got chickens, and looking after the house. And I'm going to be picking her up either tonight or tomorrow. But I've been out and I'm just heading back home, and basically now is a good time for me to meditate. So when I get back, I'm gonna do some meditation, which has been quite hard to fit in recently because my mum doesn't really have any, she doesn't have huge vast amount of space for me to actually do my meditation. And the room that I'm actually sleeping in at the moment, it's not normally a bedroom, it's just her tiny little office room, which she's put in like a fold out single bed. So it's all a bit over the place, and that's life, that's normal. It's not normal, it's not everyday normal, but it's how things are sometimes. And it's still fine and possible to be able to do your meditation and maintain that aspect of your life whilst doing what I call your duties, the things that you need to do. So I'm gonna head inside and say hello to the dogs because I've been out, and then I'll pretty much get straight upstairs and get on with some meditation and do maybe half an hour or so. I've come to learn over the years that the length of time that we meditate is not the important thing. The important thing is the quality of the time. And yeah, you can argue that sometimes the quality improves the longer you're in the meditation. So there's definitely something to be said for sometimes doing longer practices, but overall it's fine that we can just do like 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I lost my flow then, the neighbour just waved at me. It's fine to do 20 or 30 minutes. And at times, especially over the Christmas period where people are coming and going and you're coming and going, that might be all that you can grab. But for me, today is all about re-establishing the connection with the divine. I say re-establishing, the connection's obviously always there, but as you find when you're immersed in life, when you've got things going on, when you're busy, especially when your routine's a bit up and down, it can feel as though you've lost that connection a bit, or it's not quite as front of mind as normal. It's not quite as at the forefront as it normally is. So for me today, it's really about bringing that up again and re-establishing that connection, diving into the divine, merging more, which is really what meditation is. And you'll see that I'll do it in my bedroom. I don't normally use a back support. I don't normally sit on the floor cross-legged because I've got a few little niggles from when I used to run a lot, and so my back doesn't usually like it. And if I do sit on the floor cross-legged, I normally always will have a zafu, a cushion, but my zafu is at home, so I will meditate sitting on the bed and with my back up against the wall, which, as I say, it's not normally how I do it, but sometimes you have to work with what you've got. And I've done a few meditations since I've been here, obviously, each day, and it's been perfectly good. It's been lovely, actually. It's actually been quite refreshing doing it in a slightly different way, in a slightly different environment. Weirdly, I quite enjoy it, changing the environment and the position from time to time. It might be because I'm a bit of a creature of habit, and I find that I like patterns and I like routine. So when I'm at home, I'll typically meditate in the same place, in the same way, often at the same time, although not always, but fairly often it's the same time. So I'm definitely a bit of a creature of habit. And although that has its benefits, it's good for consistency, it's good for many things, there's something to be said for that like refreshing, I suppose, just like experience of doing things a bit differently, doing it in a different way, in a different environment and all of that. So it's been quite refreshing, it's been quite nice. So I'm going to head upstairs in a minute and go and do that. Before I do that, I have been the last few days been doing some qigong outside, I may run you through some of that, although it is raining at the minute, so we'll see. I'll get outside and I'll see if it's dry. I think it is still raining, but if it's dry or it's not as bad as it looks, then I might do a bit of qigong, some just deep breathing exercises, and I'll show you how that looks. If not, I'll get straight to meditation and we'll see you up there. Okay. So I promise I didn't actually set this up with the dog. But Tess has decided that she wants to meditate with me, haven't you, Tess? Good girl. Yes, you are. My mum's got 2 dogs, Tess and Monty. And they're a little bit stressed out because they're so used to my mum being here all the time. And she's having this, well, she's had the surgery, she's in hospital, so she's not been here for 2 days. And they're just a little bit confused, aren't you? You're a little bit confused of where your mum's gone. But hopefully, I've done a good enough job looking after you the last few days. So I'm meditating just in this makeshift spare room. And as you can see, well, you can't see actually, but it's tiny. It's tiny. It's almost so embarrassing that I don't want to show you. Because there's stuff everywhere. I've left the door open so that the dogs can just come in and out because they don't like it when I leave them. And I'm not going to close the window because you won't be able to see me, but the setup is very basic. I've got an incense stick going. I've got a picture of Mother Mira. My mum is fairly spiritual herself. She's nowhere near as probably deep into it as I am, I would say, in terms of like interest. But she does ask me quite a lot of questions, and you can probably see she's got this little shelf here where she's got some mala beads and bits and bobs. So it's actually quite, it sort of has brought a nice vibe, or created a nice vibe in this room. So for me, I've done a bit of qigong beforehand, and I normally like to begin to close the outer world down a little bit. So typically what I would normally do would be to close the blinds, be somewhere a bit isolated, away from pups and other people or other distractions, but has to be this way sometimes, and that's fine. So for me personally, I will normally begin every meditation with, if not some sort of breath work, normally it is some sort of breath work. If it's not, and by the way, when I say breath work, it's always deep breathing, but not, I forget the specific term for it, the accurate term for it now, but not like hyper breathing where I'm breathing really quickly or doing like long breath holds. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's just not my way. So I'll do like pranayama, nadi shodhana, or I'll do some qigong where I'm breathing deeply and filling all of my lungs, filling the lungs to their maximum capacity. Nice, steady, controlled breathing. And this really starts for me to bring me into a more meditative state. It starts to really help me. Sometimes I will do that, but not always. Sometimes I'll just get straight into the practice. And I liken it to, sometimes if you work in a certain place, let's say you work 20 minutes from where you live, if you walk the same way every single day, it gets very repetitive. If you change the route that you take here and there from time to time, really refreshes the journey. It can make a huge difference just by doing that. In the same way, in a similar way with your practice with meditation, although I always recommend, generally speaking, to stick with one practice, it's still nice to do like a different breathing exercise beforehand, or maybe go out and do like 5-10 minutes of walking meditation, or do some contemplative meditation, or read a couple of pages of a book, then get into your practice. So it doesn't need to be like, right, I do this for 5 minutes, then I do the meditation for 20 minutes, then I do this, then I do that. I tend to teach people in quite a formalized way and give them a bit of structure, but each of us has to then apply our unique touch to that and do it in a way that works for us. So I tend to just go with the flow, but for me, meditation is primarily about letting go of the human side, letting go of work, letting go of family, letting go of everything that constitutes Ben, and start to unravel that, start to go beyond that. So for me, I have to let go of all of those things and establish a connection with the divine. And I do that through mental talking, effectively, just mental chatter, just whether you want to call that prayer, whether you want to just call that friendly conversation. I will normally close my eyes, and for me personally, I have 3 teachers, you could say, that all represent God to me, or represent the divine: Mother Mera, Sai Baba, and my own teacher, Deus. So I normally close my eyes and I see them 3 in front of me, and I will communicate with them in my head, and feel as though I'm literally in a room with them, talking to them. It's developed to that over time. It wasn't always like that, but over years and years of doing this, I've got to that point where it does feel like I'm sat down with them when I visualize it. And I'll normally talk about casual things, to be honest. It will normally be like, thank you so much for this beautiful day. You know, for example, today it might be like, thank you so much for allowing me to look after the dogs. Thank you so much for allowing me to, look after my mum. Thanks so much for giving me this space. I can still meditate. I've got my incense stick. I've got this ability to go within myself and find somewhere special, something that's like, not everyone can find necessarily, although it is there for everyone. There's so much beauty, so much to be grateful for, and I will go through a process of, in effect, a gratitude process where I'm relaying all of these things to the divine, to my teachers. And once I've done that and I feel satisfied, sometimes I'll then ask for, normally I will, for guidance with my own practice. And please, can you allow me to go a bit further? Please, can you allow me to understand more? Please, could you fill me with your beautiful, crystal clear divine light? Whatever it may be, I will go on like that. And basically, when I feel ready and satisfied, I'll then let go of that chatter and I'll move into a period of quiet, silent meditation. For me, I'm not going to give away the meditation that I do, because people will probably try to replicate that, and it's not necessarily correct for everyone, so I won't tell you what I do. But an example, and this is a technique that I have done for many years at different times, is just following the breath. That as basic as that sounds, people often assume that the longer you've been doing this, you need to be on to something advanced now. You need to be doing something really different and hardcore. You refine working with the breath, just following the breath, and that will take you to places you've never dreamt of. It will take you where you need to go. And I've had some of the most profound experiences in my life just by observing my breath. So I will then move into a phase where it's a concentrated, single-pointed meditation. Today it's not going to be particularly long because I've got to go and visit my mum after this in the hospital. Generally, it will be somewhere in the region of 45 minutes, sometimes up to an hour. If I'm strapped for time, it might be half an hour, but on average about 45 minutes. And then I will come out and I'll normally say some prayers, all within my own mind, and then I will move on with my day. And that then, the vibrations that I've created, the sense of connection that I will have, generally speaking, will have found by then, the peace that I'll feel by that point, I will carry that into the day. And it's almost like a bit of a circuit. I meditate, and then I don't lose the connection with the divine, but it obviously dips off slightly, in as much as you don't feel that same level of bliss and that same level of deep peace through the whole day. It might dip off a little bit, but then you re-establish it the next day or that evening when you meditate again. And it's almost like this continuous link that each meditation brings about. It's in the UK, I'm just thinking of it now, but in the UK we've got those connecting electrical lines which obviously provide electric to the areas, and you've got the big pylons between them. And in a way, the meditation is like the pylon that keeps the circuit afloat from one day to the next. It's more than that, obviously, but it's just a nice way of thinking about it. Anyway, I'm going to get into my practice. The camera will probably not last as long as my practice is going to be. It might do, but this camera hasn't got the best battery life in the world. So I'm going to meditate, leaving that rolling. And catch you afterwards. I meditated for about half an hour in the end, which was quite nice as a lunchtime sort of meditation. And it felt very, very deep actually. You'll notice that my head is kind of drooping intermittently throughout the practice. I talk about it a little bit more afterwards, but I tend to do this when I go really, really deep in meditation. I felt really saturated in peace and bliss afterwards. It's not an experience that happens every single time I meditate, but it's fairly, fairly common. And it was a really beautiful meditation actually. Wow, that was pretty amazing. You know, that like bliss and that deep peace that you feel when you've meditated for a little while, still feeling that. You'll notice that my form goes to pot when I'm meditating, and the deeper I go, quite often anyway, the deeper I go, I'll sort of like, my head will really drop forward. And whenever I've had like deep experiences where I've accessed higher planes and things like that, my body has almost been like this. It's almost like all of the all of the muscles just become so relaxed, and everything kind of hunches over, and it's not brilliant, but I find that the more I try to correct it, the more I prevent myself falling into that state. So I've come to just let it go, let it happen, let it unwind as it unwinds, and allow my body to do what it wants to do. I spoke to my teacher about it years ago when it started happening, and he said it's not the end of the world. He said if allowing that to happen enables you to go deeper, then let it happen. So I've always taken that on board. But when I meditate, I'll always start off quite formally, although I'm not today because of the position and all of the things you know about. But I'll start off quite formally, and then I sometimes, like if I'm on a stool, it happens less, like a kneeling stool, because of the way that your body is aligned. It doesn't happen so much. But if I'm sitting down as I am now, and especially if I've got back support, I will just like fall forward as soon as I feel myself like sort of slipping away, going deeper. That will happen. But today was just like, just deep silence, deep peace. I felt washed with light, really, is probably the best way I can describe it. My face here goes numb, and I know when I've had those experiences of transitioning into the other planes, my body starts to, basically the entirety of my body goes completely numb, and it feels like I've had a general anesthetic, to the extent where I have to move the body part to check that it's still there, because I just can't. I've got no awareness of it at all. I wasn't at that point today, but I felt it all around here. My hands were doing the same thing. There were signs. There were things that typically start to happen when I get into that depth. But it doesn't matter whether I do or I don't. To be honest, it's an opportunity for me to immerse myself in the divine more, silence my mind, go beyond Ben for a little while. Sometimes I'll go much further beyond Ben and something like that will happen. Sometimes it's just that deep silence. Sometimes, even now, sometimes depending on what's going on, I might sit down and the mind might have more thoughts than I'd like. That's all right. This work is continuous, and we're human beings. We live in the world. We've got busy jobs, busy lives. Sometimes that filters through into when you sit down. So it does vary, but generally, I mean, overall, my meditations have got a hell of a lot deeper than they ever were. They continually get deeper, sort of maybe on like a 6 monthly basis. Like they're always very deep. They're always pretty deep now, but I would say like maybe not even every 6 months, maybe like every 3, 4 months, however long it ends up being, there is like a period where after so long, let's say 5 months, I will feel a significant or a noticeable difference in the depth that I'm reaching. And then like another 5 months will go by and I'll feel a different degree of depth, and then a different degree of depth. It's almost like it's all obviously always continually improving. I'm continually improving, but then I suppose over the course of time it becomes noticeable. The difference becomes noticeable. So yeah, today was beautiful, but I wanted really just to give you the opportunity to see in a really authentic, real way how I weave meditation into a not very stable position, in as much as I'm not in my house, so I'm looking after my mum and all that sort of stuff. But it is possible, and it's more than possible. It's enjoyable. It's still really beautiful, and I got to meditate with my dog, although she's not my dog, but I kind of consider her my dog. I was here when she was I nearly said when she was born, when my mum got her. She's disappeared now. Anyway, that's my meditation session today. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you want to be part of my online school, by the way, I have a link in the description to that. It's called the Inner Journey School. Feel free to join us, but failing that, I will see you on the next video. See you in a bit.